Hello, it's Lord Slar here, and yesterday I went to the BFI in London to see an early screening of the Macra Terror animation. So I thought I'd today share my thoughts about it with you all. So as a 60s fan, I obviously get very excited about all these animations, as some of the more really good episodes that go a bit overlooked get the exposure they deserve through animation, as they breathe new life into them, and sometimes it works a bit better than others, and some animations, the style changes a bit and it gets better or worse. So let's just see how this particular one stacks up, and I think this was a good story to do it to, as it's one of those ones which really begs for visuals, a lot more than some of the other Doctor Who stories, because there's a lot of scenes with little to no dialogue, really, and obviously that's just not really conveyed very well through a reconstruction. And also it's another one of those stories which has some very zany, out there visuals and imagery, which gives the story a very sinister edge, but you don't quite get that from the reconstructions as well as you do from actually getting to see it visually. So let's see how they managed to do it with this story. So first of all, it looks absolutely beautiful. By far, I don't think I've seen an animation that looks better than this in terms of all of the Doctor Who ones. I watched it in colour because that's how it was screened, and honestly, I'd recommend that for this story, even though I often watch the other ones just in black and white, even if there's an option for colour. This one looked really, really good in colour. There's some wonderful lighting, which often a lot of other animations don't quite get right, so it kind of lends an extra bit of atmosphere to it, and the colours were beautiful and vibrant, they were everywhere. It really made these sets look so much better. Obviously, they took a few liberties and kind of, weren't accurately replicating what the set would have looked like, but they just look so nice. And there's just loads of moments where it's like, wow, that looks visually quite stunning, especially in the first episode when they're outside on the little sandy dunes. It just looks lovely. And so it looks really nice, and the animation as well for the character models is really smooth, as I found in a few other of the newer animations that the characters are a bit clunky when they're moving, specifically in Power of the Daleks, which was disappointing, because in the trailers you saw the Daleks move so well, and then you just saw like the characters just go. And that's not the case here. They actually look pretty fluid and pretty natural when they're moving around and doing various actions. It's quite well done, and just generally everything about the animation, there's a lot more creativity with the visuals that they've been given. Like, there's this really good gag in the third episode. If anybody's watched the Macra Terror, they'll know about when Jamie does the Highland fling out of the door, and then it's kind of these double doors, like saloon flapping doors, and kind of they flap once, and you see that the security guards are outside and flap twice, like Jamie runs back through, and the security guards are still there, and they're smiling. There's lots of creativity put into making the visuals just more worth doing. Like, a lot of the times, you often find it's a bit run-of-the-mill, like they're just trying to, as close as possible, replicate what the original director did based off the director's notes. Whereas, I think sometimes with the animations, it's okay to take a few liberties to make it look, as visually interesting as you can, because animation is a very different medium, and you can't really accurately recreate Doctor Who like that. So I think doing things like that can be a good thing. I know some purists aren't a fan, but I think it can be a good idea, and there were quite a few liberties taken in this. There were some scenes removed, such as the Doctor's getting the makeover scene. I believe that was something about that being far too difficult to animate, or something wrong with the soundtrack. It was something like that. But it's sad that that was removed, but the scene still naturally flowed together, like with that being cut out. And also a few other liberties they took is there's some extra shots, like there's a lot of panning shots of both the outside the colony, which I don't believe you see in the original Macra Terror, but it looks very nice here, as well as panning shots on the outside and things like that, and they work really well. It's nice to have some establishing shots, which you probably couldn't really do in the original, because obviously they'd be these very small sets, and if you try to do a panning shot, you'd end up going off the set. So I think they were nice things to add. Another liberty they really took was with the Macra, because the Macra, obviously in the original, were a disaster in terms of the production, because everybody hated them. They had to be transported around by vans, and they could barely move, and nobody's really happy with them. So for this one, they changed them a lot more. So instead of these weird fidgeting crabs, they're these really scary and quite large, I suppose spider crabs is probably the best description of them. And yeah, they're way taller, and obviously they move a hell of a lot smoother, and it just makes them look way more creepy. And one of the biggest liberties I think they took is the scene, which is a surviving clip that we have, where Polly's foot gets trapped inside the Macra's claw. Instead of her just, like, flinging herself into it and lying down while it grabs onto her, like in the original, this time it reaches out, grabs her, and picks her up and holds her upside down, and then Ben's actually hitting its leg rather than the claw that's holding her, which, personally, I think was a good thing to do. Yeah, it may not be accurate to the source material, but animation is a very different medium from, you know, how it would have originally been shot, so, you know, I don't see a problem with it. I know some people aren't happy when things like that are done, but I think it can be a good thing, and I think the liberties they took here really work to complement the story rather than take away from it. And honestly, I think it would look way more unnatural if they just tried to replicate how it was in the original with the dodgy-looking crab and, you know, Polly just lying, static like, oh no, Ben, it's got my foot. And it wouldn't quite work at all in animation. Like, when it's being filmed, you can kind of forgive it because it's like, it's just a bit of fluffy old TV, but it would just look weird in the animation. So I'm glad they made this change, and I'm glad they made the few changes they did. Obviously, it's sad to lose that scene because it was a bit too difficult to animate, or whatever the reason was. But everything else that they've added, or, you know, just all the liberties they've taken, I think were handled really well and complemented the story massively and made the animation a very pleasant experience. And yeah, so the animation for this one was brilliant. I'd say it's one of the best animations they've done. It's probably on par, if not slightly better, than the Moon Base, which was my previous favourite. I'm still not sure, because the Moon Base was very good, and that's probably still the smoothest flowing animation. Yeah, I'd say it's just on par with the Moon Base, actually. So it's really good, and it's really worth getting. And I know I haven't really talked about the story here, because I was mainly wanting to talk about the animation, but if you want to know my opinion on the story, it's a really, really good one. It's a very underrated one. And it's one of those, how would I describe it? It's got a very sinister atmosphere, in the sense that everything's so cheerful, and then it's all a facade, and it's peeled down. It's that, I like that kind of thing. And it really works very well in this particular story. I know that wasn't a very concise review, but if you want to see my full opinion on it, you can always go back to my Season 4 review I did over a year ago, and skip to the part where I talk about the Macra Terror. Anyway, that's it for now. Definitely buy the Macra Terror DVD if you're watching this video, I'm sure you like classic Doctor Who, so it's definitely worth buying. It was great, and I'm really looking forward to whatever animation they do next time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next time in another video.